The wind off Lake Michigan cut through my thin coat like a knife, freezing the tears on my cheeks before they could even fall. I clutched my 3-day-old son against my chest, shielding him from the biting Chicago snow, while the fresh stitches across my abdomen burned with every shiver. Finally, the white Range Rover pulled up to the curb. It was the car I had paid for, though Brandon didn't know that. The window rolled down just 2 inches. I reached for the handle, but it was locked. "I'm not unlocking it, Sophia," Brandon said, looking me up and down with pure disgust. "You look unsanitary. I have a VIP client meeting in an hour, and I can't risk the interior smelling like milk and misery." Those white leather seats cost extra. He reached into his pocket, crumpled up a $25 bill, and flicked it out the window. It landed in the gray, freezing slush at my boots. "Take a cab," he said, rolling the window up. "Don't ruin my investment." Then, he drove away, leaving his wife and newborn son to freeze on the sidewalk. Before we find out how much that mistake cost him, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I picked up the crumpled bill from the slush, not because I needed it, but because I needed the evidence. My fingers were numb, but the pain in my abdomen was sharp and blinding, a constant reminder of the major surgery I had undergone only 3 days ago. I didn't cry. Tears wouldn't warm my son, and panic wouldn't get us home. I simply calculated the distance to the bus stop 3 blocks and began to walk. Each step was a negotiation with gravity. The wind whipped around the corners of the hospital complex, indifferent to my struggle. I tucked the blanket tighter around my son's face, shielding him from a world that had welcomed him with ice. When the bus finally arrived, it hissed to a halt, a metal box smelling of wet wool, stale coffee, and exhaustion. I paid the fare with Brandon's crumpled charity and found a seat in the back, wedged between a tired nurse and a window streaked with condensation. My phone buzzed against my thigh. It was a notification from Instagram. "Brandon. The builder is live." I shouldn't have looked. It was masochism, pure and simple. But I needed to see the asset I was about to liquidate. I tapped the screen. The video feed was crisp, broadcast in high definition from the glass-enclosed rooftop lounge of the Onyx Hotel. The contrast was nauseating. While I sat in a humid, rattling bus, shivering in a coat that was too thin, Brandon was basking in the golden glow of heat lamps and expensive mood lighting. He was holding a flute of champagne, flanked by his mother, Patricia, and his sister, Chloe. "To the big deal." Brandon toasted, his smile showing too many teeth. "Secured the funding. Finally got the capital to take this to the next level. And to getting that new car smell back," Chloe chimed in, laughing as she adjusted her ring light. "Seriously, Brandon, you were a saint for dealing with her. She looked like a walking biohazard. She's just low value," Patricia added, sipping her drink with her pinky extended. "You need a partner who matches your aesthetic, sweetie. Not a charity case." I watched them laugh. I watched my husband, the father of the child sleeping against my chest, nod in agreement as his family dismantled my dignity for engagement metrics. For 2 years, people have asked me why I stayed. Why I hid my identity as the heiress to a shipping empire and played the role of the supportive, struggling wife. The truth is, cruelty doesn't arrive all at once. It enters your life like a slow leak in a hull, barely noticeable until you're already sinking. I had categorized his controlling nature as leadership. I had filed his arrogance under executive ambition. I told myself that his sharp edges were just the side effects of a man trying to build an empire. I normalized the disrespect because I wanted to believe I was investing in a diamond in the rough. But watching him on that screen, mocking the mother of his child to strangers on the internet, the realization hit me with the force of a margin call. He wasn't a diamond. He was a piece of glass that I had spent millions polishing. I didn't hate him in that moment. Hate is too passionate. What I felt was the cold, clinical detachment of an auditor realizing a project is a total loss. The man on the screen wasn't my husband anymore. He was a liability, and it was time to cut him loose. Then Brandon said it. He raised his glass, looking directly into the camera lens as if he could see me through the screen. "And here's the real kicker," he announced. his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Tomorrow, once the wire transfer clears, I'm serving Sophia with divorce papers. The upgrade is already lined up. Now that the funding is secured, I don't need the baggage. The bus hit a pothole, jarring my spine, but the jolt I felt was internal. He wasn't just ungrateful. He was actively plotting to discard me the moment he thought he had extracted my value. He thought he had secured his future. He didn't know he had just signed his own liquidation order. I didn't scream. Hysteria is for people who don't have a plan. I simply opened my contacts and dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. Mr. Sterling, I said when the familiar voice answered. Execute the kill switch. All of it. Are you sure? Sophia? The family attorney's voice was calm, devoid of surprise. This will be scorched earth. He won't have a cent left to buy a coffee, let alone pay his legal fees. I'm sure, I replied, my voice steady. He thinks he's a self-made man. I want to show him exactly who built the ladder he's standing on. As Mr. Sterling began typing, initiating the protocols that would freeze assets across 3 continents, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't just a wife scorned. I was the silent partner in every success Brandon had ever claimed. I was the one who had secretly paid the lease on the lakefront penthouse he claimed was a perk from an investor. I was the one who had funneled the startup capital through shell companies so he could feel like a founder. I was the one who had arranged the VIP clients who were actually just my father's business associates doing me a favor. Every luxury he enjoyed, every deal he closed, every ounce of prestige he draped around his shoulders like a cape, it was all me. I had built a golden cage for him, hoping he would eventually learn to fly. Instead, he had decided to set it on fire. It's done, Mr. Sterling said. The accounts are frozen. The credit lines are revoked. The lease termination notice has been sent to the building management. And the fraud investigation? That's been filed with the district attorney. Thank you, Arthur, I said. Send the car to the safe house. I'll meet you there. I hung up and looked down at my son. He was sleeping soundly, unaware that his mother had just dismantled his father's entire existence in under 3 minutes. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting to ensure my son never learned that kind of cruelty from the man who was supposed to protect him. The bus rattled on through the snow, carrying me away from the hospital, away from the marriage, and toward a reckoning that was long overdue. Brandon was celebrating a victory that didn't exist, spending money he didn't have, surrounded by people who would abandon him the moment the champagne stopped flowing. He thought he was the king of the world. He was about to find out he was just a tenant in my kingdom, and the rent was due. In the penthouse lounge of the Onyx Hotel, the bill for the celebration arrived on a silver platter. I knew the total without looking. $60,000. Enough to buy a starter home in the suburbs, spent in 3 hours on vintage champagne and imported caviar. Brandon didn't even glance at the receipt. He simply slid the platinum card, the one linked to the account I had funded that morning, across the table with the casual disdain of a man who has never had to count pennies. I watched the live stream on my phone, the pixelated image freezing and jumping as the bus rattled over the city streets. I saw the waiter bow slightly, take the card, and insert it into the portable terminal. This is the moment I had been waiting for. The silence before the crash. The waiter frowned. He pulled the card out, wiped the chip on his apron, and inserted it again. A murmur went through the table. Brandon laughed, a nervous, barking sound. "It's the machine," he said loudly, for the benefit of the camera. "Those things are always glitchy. Try the gold." He tossed a second card onto the table. The waiter tried it. The result was the same. A sharp digital beep of rejection. Then the corporate card. Beep. Declined. The atmosphere at the table shifted instantly. The golden lighting seemed to turn harsh. The waiter, previously obsequious, straightened his spine. His smile vanished, replaced by the cold, hard look of a man who realizes he might not get tipped. "Sir," the waiter said, his voice cutting through the ambient house music. "These cards haven't just been declined. The system has flagged them for theft by the primary account holder. I'll need to confiscate them, and call security. Theft. The word hung in the air like smoke. On the small screen of my phone, I watched Brandon's face. It didn't turn red with anger. It went gray with terror. And in that moment, I understood something profound about the nature of power. There is a prevalent delusion among men like Brandon that money is just a tool, an accessory to their natural brilliance. They believe that if you strip away the cash, the man remains. But that is a lie. When you build your identity on a foundation you didn't pour, on resources you didn't earn, you are hollow. Brandon's confidence wasn't internal, it was rented. It was a costume he wore, paid for by my inheritance. Now that the credit limit was gone, the man didn't stand up to fight. He collapsed. He shrank into his chair, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a savior, looking for me. That's a mistake, he stammered, his voice cracking. My wife. She handles the banking. It's a clerical error. You said you were the CEO! Patricia shrieked, her facade of elegance shattering instantly. You said you secured the funding. Brandon, do not tell me we are stuck here with a $60,000 tab and no way to pay it. It's a glitch, Brandon yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. Chloe, stop filming. Turn it off. The live stream cut to black. I put my phone back in my pocket. The bus was warm now, or maybe it was just the heat of satisfaction spreading through my chest. They were trapped in a glass box in the sky, surrounded by luxury they couldn't afford, with the eyes of the elite boring into them. The humiliation wouldn't just be financial, it would be social extinction. They thought they were untouchable, but they forgot that glass houses are the easiest to shatter. All it takes is one stone, thrown with precision. And I had just thrown a boulder. The notification on my phone confirmed the next phase of the liquidation. Lease termination. Executed. I wasn't watching a live stream anymore. I didn't need to. I knew the logistics of the building better than the architect did because my family owned the holding company that managed it. I knew that when a primary guarantor pulls their support due to a breach of contract, the eviction protocol is immediate and automated. Brandon, Patricia, and Chloe arrived at the lakefront penthouse 20 minutes after fleeing the restaurant. I imagined they were desperate for the safety of the heated lobby, eager to spin the night's disaster into some story about banking errors or identity theft. They rushed to the private elevator bank, the sanctuary that separated them from the common people of Chicago. Brandon tapped his key fob against the sensor. Instead of the soft, welcoming chime of access, there was a harsh, dissonant buzz. The light on the reader flashed angry red. He tapped it again. And again. Panic has a specific rhythm, frantic, repetitive, and useless. The concierge, a man named Elias who Brandon had treated like invisible furniture for 2 years, stepped out from behind the marble desk. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't rushing to open the gate manually. He was holding a thick, cream-colored envelope bearing the seal of Sterling and Associates. Mr. Williams, Elias said, his voice projecting across the silent lobby. I cannot grant you access. The leaseholder has terminated the agreement effective immediately. You are trespassing. Trespassing? Patricia screeched, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. We live here. My son is the CEO. Open this gate immediately or you will be fired. Mr. Williams is no longer the CEO, Elias replied, handing the envelope to Brandon across the turnstile. And you do not live here. The locks have been changed. The biometric data has been purged. Brandon tore open the envelope. His hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the papers. It wasn't just an eviction notice. It was a summons. This was the criminal twist. During our marriage, I had set up the startup capital accounts with strict covenants. The money was designated solely for operational expenses, payroll, rent, software development. But Brandon, in his arrogance, had assumed the money was his personal piggy bank. He had used corporate funds to buy the Range Rover. He had used investor capital to buy the fake Rolex and the designer clothes currently freezing on his back. In the eyes of the law, that wasn't just bad money management. It was embezzlement. It was fraud. What is this? Brandon whispered, staring at the document. Misappropriation of funds? Grand larceny? The police have been notified, Elias said, checking his watch. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises before they arrive to process the complaint. They didn't argue. They didn't fight. The reality of prison has a way of silencing even the most entitled narcissists. They turned around and walked back out through the revolving doors, stumbling into the Chicago night. The wind had picked up, howling off the lake with renewed fury. They stood on the sidewalk, shivering in their thousands of dollars worth of silk and wool that offered absolutely no protection against the elements. They had no car keys. They had no apartment. They had no credit cards. They were exactly where they had left me 3 hours ago, out in the cold, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the bitter taste of their own cruelty. The only difference was, I had the strength to survive it. They didn't. Desperation is a powerful navigator. It can drive a man to walk 3 miles in a blizzard with holes in his Italian loafers, fueled only by the delusion that there is still a way to fix the ledger. Brandon, Patricia, and Chloe didn't just wander aimlessly into the Chicago night. They tracked my phone. I had left the location services on intentionally a digital breadcrumb trail leading them to the final lesson of the evening. They followed the signal to the Gold Coast, to a street lined with limestone mansions that stood like fortresses against the storm. They arrived at the iron gates of the Sterling estate just after midnight. I watched them from the security monitors inside the heated limousine idling in the driveway. They looked less like a family and more like a warning. Their expensive coats were sodden, heavy with melted snow. Their faces were gray, their lips blue. They huddled together not out of love, but out of a biological need to conserve heat. Brandon pressed the intercom button with a shaking hand. "Delivery," he croaked, his voice raw. We're looking for Sophia. She works here. Please, we just need to come inside." He still didn't get it. Even at rock bottom, his arrogance wouldn't allow him to see me as anything other than a subordinate. He assumed I had fled to my employer, that I was the nanny or the housekeeper for the wealthy family that lived behind these walls. I tapped the partition. "Open the gate, Arthur. Let's finish this." The massive iron gates groaned open. Brandon and his family stepped forward, relief washing over their faces. They expected a service entrance. They expected a reprieve. Instead, the sleek black limousine rolled forward, blocking their path. They stopped, confused. Brandon stepped toward the car, waving his arms. "Hey, excuse me, we need help." "My wife is inside." The rear window slid down with a silent, electric hum. The warm, golden light from the car's interior spilled out onto the snow, illuminating their wretchedness. I sat inside, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, my son sleeping peacefully in a car seat that cost more than Brandon's first car. The air inside smelled of leather and vanilla. The air outside smelled of ozone and despair. Brandon froze. He looked at me, then at the car, then back at me. The cognitive dissonance was almost visible in his eyes. He couldn't reconcile the woman he had discarded on a curb 6 hours ago with the woman sitting in a mobile throne. "Sophia?" He whispered, his teeth chattering. They let you sit in the limo? Is the boss home? You have to talk to them. Tell them it's a mistake." "There is no boss, Brandon," I said. My voice calm, insulated from the wind. "This is my car. This is my house. The shipping containers you see in the harbor with the Blue Star logo, that's my family name." He blinked, snow catching on his eyelashes. "What?" "The investors," I continued, "were my father's friends. The startup capital was my trust fund allowance. The lease you just lost? I own the building." The realization hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, clutching his chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the crushing weight of a missed opportunity. He realized he hadn't just thrown away a wife. He had thrown away the lottery ticket he had spent his whole life trying to buy. "Sophia, please," he begged, lunging for the door handle. The lock clicked, holding firm. "I didn't know. I was stressed. I love you. We can fix this. Think of our son. He needs his father." "He has a mother," I said. "That's enough." Patricia pushed forward, her face a mask of frozen mascara. "We're family, Sophia. You can't leave us out here. We'll die." "You won't die," I said. "You'll just be uncomfortable." It's amazing what the human body can endure when it has no other choice. I reached into my purse. Brandon's eyes widened, a flicker of hope sparking in the dark. He thought I was reaching for a checkbook. He thought I was reaching for a key. Instead, I pulled out a stiff, wet piece of paper. It was the $25 bill he had thrown at my feet in front of the hospital. It had dried, crinkled, and stained, a perfect artifact of his cruelty. I held it out the window. The wind caught it, fluttering it against his chest. He grabbed it reflexively. "Here," I said. I pressed the button. The window rolled up, sealing the warmth back inside. "Go," I told the driver. As the limousine pulled away, merging into the traffic of the city I now ruled, I didn't look back. I didn't need to see them standing there, clutching $25 in the snow. The transaction was complete, the debt was paid, and my balance sheet was finally clear. The snow melted, and so did my hesitation. The seasons turned, burying that winter under layers of new growth, and with each passing quarter, the shipping empire I had inherited grew stronger. I wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. I was on the cover of Forbes, the headline reading "The Titan of the Trade." My son wasn't a bundle of blankets anymore. He was a toddler, walking with a confidence his father never possessed, running through the halls of the estate that was finally, fully ours. One afternoon, my driver slowed the car at a busy intersection in the financial district. I looked out the window, reviewing a merger contract, when a movement on the sidewalk caught my eye. A man was hunched over a bicycle, strapping a thermal food delivery bag to the rack. He looked older than his years, his face lined with the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. He was wearing a jacket that was too thin for the chill, the cuffs frayed. It was Brandon. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the newsstand next to him. My face was plastered on the front page of the business section, bold and unignorable. He stood there, frozen, a ghost haunting the city he used to think he owned. I watched him for a long moment. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I just felt the quiet satisfaction of a contract finally fulfilled. He was exactly where his own choices had led him. He had spent his life chasing the appearance of wealth, and now, stripped of my subsidy, he was left with the reality of his own worth. He turned then, and for a split second, our eyes met through the tinted glass. He couldn't see me, but he saw the car. He saw the emblem on the hood. He knew. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't wave. I simply turned back to my contract and signaled the driver to move on. The light turned green, and we left him behind, a footnote in a story he no longer had the right to narrate. That evening, I stood on the balcony of the penthouse, the one I had kept, the one he had been evicted from, and looked out at the city lights. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who took the bus in the rain, the one who made herself small so a small man could feel big. If you are reading this, and you feel like you are living on the edge of your own life, listen to me. If you are shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's pocket, stop. If you are financing someone else's ego with your own dignity, cancel the transaction. We are taught that endurance is a virtue, that staying is strength. But sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is liquidate the asset and walk away. Walking away isn't quitting. It's waking up. It is the realization that you are the architect of your own value, and no one else holds the blueprint. You don't need their permission to be the CEO of your own existence. You just need the courage to fire them. I looked down at the city, a sprawling grid of lights and possibilities. I had taken back my name, my fortune, and my future. The revenge wasn't the point. The freedom was.